Welcome to another episode of Ask Dave, better known as hashtag Ask Dave, here on RxMuscle.com, brought to you by Species Nutrition. Visit speciesnutrition.com. I'm your host, Sadiq Faruqi, 30-minute question and answer show with Dave Palumbo. This is Wednesday, November 3rd, 2016. Glad you can join us as always. If you're watching us for the first time live on our YouTube channel, we ask that you hit subscribe below and like this video. We will continue to put out this kind of content for you, the best fans in bodybuilding. As we now bring in Dave Palumbo. Dave, how's the move going?
Well, theoretically, if you guys are watching this show, I will have made it to Florida by now. And if I didn't and I died, then this will be a very valuable episode because it'll be the last time you ever see Dave Palumbo. So I don't really know what happened to me yet. If I can go back in time, I might be able to predict that. But for now, we'll assume all went as well.
Johnny, at some point you got to cue the Back to the Future music. This has to happen. This is very trippy, exactly. As always, 30-minute question and answer show. You can join us on the Muscle Central Forum on RxMuscle.com. If you're not already a member, it is free to register. If you're watching us live on YouTube, you can ask your questions on the chat box on the right-hand side of the video player, Instagram, Facebook, or Twitter using hashtag AskDave. We start in the Muscle Central Forum and go to the incredible bulk. Love it. Dave, I'm a darker bodybuilder. How much of a tanning product do I have to put on? And how long does it take for the tanning product to come off? Also, what tanning product should I use?
Look, I'm a big advocate of liquid sun rays. I love Marilyn Spatola, who owns the company. I think she's got a great product. It's probably one of the most reliable tans in terms of not turning weird colors or fading or running. I do like Jantana too. I'm very close to her. I've known her for many years. When Jantana is doing the spraying, it usually comes out great as well. For a dark bodybuilder or a guy who's black or even just someone who has a Middle Eastern, probably don't need to tan in a tanning bed very much, but you definitely want to make sure you get spray tan. I think in today's day and age, if you do your own tan yourself, you're crazy. With all the money you spend on food and drugs and supplements and registration fees, are you going to really cheap out a couple of bucks on getting a spray tan? Just spend the money, do the spray tan, and it'll look perfect. And especially if you're a darker bodybuilder, you can probably do one spray and you're good to go. But don't think just because your skin is dark that you don't need to tan, because that's a huge mistake. Because under the lights, you're gonna look gray. Okay, you got to have that rich brown, deep, consistent coloring. That's the most important thing. Remember, just because someone has dark skin doesn't mean they're consistently dark over their entire body. Armpits, there's certain areas behind the knees that will never be dark. So you got to get spray tan, or you got to put some kind of base tan on before getting on stage. Remember, I've said this before. You can only control 3 factors that day of that show. Presentation, okay, which is super important, obviously. Your conditioning, which is all diet related, and your coloring. Don't screw up any one of those.
Let's go to Jack. Dave, at what point of a ketogenic diet do you start using fat burners, and what quantities? And the second part of the question, what other veggies besides green beans, asparagus, and spinach do you recommend?
You could use fat burners from day one. Most of my guys I work with, I'll have them on Lipolyze, or if they're using performance enhancing type stuff, I will have them on clenbuterol, maybe some Cytomel. You can start that from day one. It depends on how much weight the person has to lose. If they're not that fat, then I might wait a little longer before putting them in. But it's really, really dependent. Now, the second part of the question was, what's it?
What veggies do you recommend besides beans, asparagus, and spinach?
I use green beans, asparagus, and spinach, everyone knows, a lot because they're really low in carbohydrates. And so I'd rather give someone a little bit, or even green salads. I'd rather be able to give someone something that's going to fill them up a little bit than have to say, oh, you can only have 4 broccoli spears because broccoli has more carbs in it. So you got to look at the, what the carb content is of these vegetables. A lot of vegetables, you might think, oh, these are healthy for you, green beans, but they're starchy vegetables. There's a lot of starches, meaning there's a lot of carbs that are absorbable in those things. So once again, between salads, green beans, asparagus, spinach, arugula, anything that really doesn't get absorbed is probably the best way to go. Even some cabbage is okay. But when you start getting, as soon as the vegetables turn colors into the yellows and the reds, like peppers and squashes and stuff like that and zucchinis, you're building up way more carbohydrates. I'd stay away from those.
Let's go to Jay Lopez for Dave. When you were at the top of your game, what cycle did you feel gave you the best results and at what dosage? Also, well, let's go to that one. I mean, the second part of it is what ancillaries did you use leading up to show? Clen, T3, how much did you run, and for what length of time?
Yeah, I've talked about this before, but to me, the two most potent anabolic steroids are testosterone and trenbolone acetate. And those are my two favorites. That doesn't mean that I didn't use other ones, but toward the end of my career, to be honest with you, the last 3 years or 4 years of my career, I've only used test and trenbolone. That was it. And I used about 3 IUs of GH. I already had a ton of size on me, so I didn't have to really put any more on. I wanted to just keep my body hard, and I wanted to keep my side effects as low as possible. And I really didn't need to take all those drugs. So there was no reason to I didn't need to get any bigger, so there was no reason to subject myself to them. But I felt that those drugs are so potent that you could probably, if those were the only steroids that existed, you probably the bodybuilders would look just exactly the same today. That's how strong they were. Now, that's not to say that adding in some Masteron and some Winstrol pre-contest isn't going to make it a little bit better. But I think that by and far the drugs that do the most of the testosterone and trenbolone, obviously GH giving the muscles a nice full look, obviously helping with fat burning. I liked clenbuterol, but I didn't really need to use a lot of it. I probably used 20 micrograms twice a day, and that was enough. But I know other people that needed more. To me, clenbuterol is the most potent fat burner on the market available of any drug. Maybe DNP is stronger, but DNP is way too dangerous to use, so I wouldn't even consider that like a viable option. That's like saying, well, hemlock will work better, but yeah, you'll be dead when you use hemlock. So my point is that I think that clenbuterol is the most potent fat burner on the market. So what else do you need? Well, you might need some estrogen blockers. I did use some Arimidex to keep estrogen levels lower. I did use some Diazide to get rid of water, diuretics the last day before a show. But by and far, the simpler you keep it, the better it works. As the old saying goes, too many ingredients kind of ruins the brew, so to speak. And that's honestly, what I did. Now, earlier in my career, I did use other things pre-contest. I did use Winstrol. There really wasn't any Masteron back then. We used Parabolin. I used Primobolin. I used to use the Primobolin acetate tabs. I really liked them a lot. I would use Halotest in the last 2 weeks to harden up because it was a really high androgen. Made you feel like absolute crap and miserable, but it worked. But once again, if you want to look at a minimalist view of what works the most potently, it was test and trenbolone.
Let's go to, is it either Typhoon or Typhon? Dave, what is your opinion of Tirana-style training like 8x8 and 10x10, lighter weight, with 15 to 20 seconds rest between sets? Also, what do you think about heavy cream on keto?
The workout regimen sounds like a CrossFit workout, so I would say that would not be something that I would recommend. If you want to be a huge bodybuilder with thick muscle and density, you got to lift heavy weights. Maybe 0.001% of the bodybuilding pros have ever built tremendous amounts of mass on lightweight, and probably the only person who fits that category would be Paul Dillette, because I heard Paul would train with the lightest weights, and he was just a monster. But other than him, who's a genetic freak, most people lift. Even Kevin Levrone, who had some of the best genetics in bodybuilding, lifted heavy weights. The guy bench pressed 405 for reps. He would squat 600. These are not light weights. I mean, look at the biggest guys in our sport today. Look at the guys who've come up the quickest: Akeem Williams, Dallas McCarver, Justin Compton, even Cody Montgomery. These guys are lifting heavy weight in the gym. Dallas and Akeem may be the two strongest guys of all time as far as bodybuilders go. I'd like to have them have a lift-off one of these days, because that would be a tremendous battle. But heavy weights, high intensity, build muscle.
Let's go to Dr. Steak. Dave, I would rather give my kidneys to George Farah to see him compete in Mr. Olympia again and spend the rest of my life drinking Kai Green's homemade grapefruit juice than watch your show. Question, have you read Arthur L. Ray's books? And if yes, do you believe that there was any useful information in them, or is everything just mumbo-jumbo?
I'm going to be honest. I tried to read his books. I haven't read them in completion. I read a lot of them, and some of the stuff was out of control, out of this world, crazy. And some of the stuff was really good. The problem is knowing what's good and what's not good. That's sometimes a dangerous book. But Arthur had these extreme viewpoints and these extreme insights that were his own. You can't doubt him for saying this is the way I think it works. But I don't agree with everything he says in the book, and I think some things were he was almost like trying to be an innovator, and maybe some of them he tried to innovate too much. Okay, and it was so there's good information in there and there's bad information in there. As far as I'm concerned, but the fact that he put it out there and he had the balls to put it out there and organize it so well, that to me is impressive. Because I'm too fucking lazy to sit down and write my own book, which is what I should have done 10 years ago, or I should do now, but I'm too busy. And I don't even think I'm too busy. Look, if I wanted to do it, I would probably sit down and do it. Until I want to do it, I won't do it. But the bottom line is that I think the book was very well put together. Is all the information things that I agree with? Not necessarily.
Mr. Eco or Echo, we got another Kai Green reference here. I hate this show so much. I would rather have a naked, oiled-up wrestling match with Steve Blackman while gagging on Kai Green's used grapefruit. Wow.
A lot of grapefruit references today.
On that note, a couple of days ago, Dave did a video critiquing Kai Green and Kevin Levroni's guest posing, and then talked about why he wants Kai Green back on the Olympia stage. That video is available right now on RxMuscle.com and the RxMuscle YouTube channel. The question: what are the scientific benefits from getting the pump? Is it optimal, necessary to build muscle?
The pump necessarily doesn't mean anything. It's more a psychological advantage, I think. And what do I mean by that? Well, when the muscles are pumped up with blood, okay, you feel the muscles more. Okay, you feel them more, and I think that people have a better mind-muscle connection when the muscles are pumped up. However, pumping a muscle up, because you can do that with a beer in your hand, doesn't mean the muscles are going to grow. Okay, now if you're using that pump to then, like I said, activate your muscle fibers more, so that when you do go heavy, you can feel them more, then it works. So in essence, the pump can be I guess you could say, an impetus for muscle growth, but it's not the reason you're getting muscle growth. The reason you're getting muscle growth is because you're overloading a muscle. What happens when you overload a muscle? When you overload a muscle with a tremendous amount of weight, the entire muscle fiber, every fiber in that muscle must contract. It's called recruitment. How many muscle fibers you recruit for a specific movement given a specific weight will dictate, okay, how big the muscle will get. Why? Because the more muscle fibers you can recruit, the more you're breaking down, the more that will grow back bigger. And that's why I think the guys that do like half reps, quarter reps, they're not doing the full range, they're not recruiting all the fibers. Guys that don't do heavy enough weight, if the muscle, it doesn't have to lift a heavy weight, it doesn't have to recruit all the fibers to do the job. It's like kind of like if you're moving a 10-gallon fish tank, one guy could do it by himself. But if you're trying to move the 600-gallon fish tank I had in my office, you have to have 6 guys in here, more recruitment, because otherwise the tank won't get off the stand. And that's exactly what happens when you're working out with weights. You want to do maximal recruitment, and that takes heavy weights.
Take one more from the Muscle Central Forum, then we're going to go to our Instagram questions. Let's go to Death Rider. Dave, I'm 5'5", 190, low body fat. My arms are 17 inches cold. They have not grown in over 3 years. I've tried a variety of exercise methods, but they just don't grow anymore. Do you have any advice?
Well, look, I don't see what you're doing in the gym, and I don't know how you eat or what supplements you take or anything like that. But, I've recommended to people, and I know my arms have responded very well to unilateral, meaning one arm at a time, movements, okay? Specifically concentrated movements like cable movements, rather than doing these complex dual arm movements like skull crushers and stuff like that, because I just don't feel them. If you're feeling the muscle, however, and you've tried all the different various techniques and it still doesn't work, you just might have bad arm genetics. Now, bad arm genetics doesn't mean your arms won't grow. It means they won't grow big enough to give you the look that you're looking for. And in that case, a site enhancement oil is something that you might consider using. Something like Chris Clark Synthesize or the Painless Pumps product. These are products that I sell at DavePalumbo.com. I've talked about them in the past. I even offered, if people want, I will send them the protocols about how to use the product properly. So you guys can contact me at huge285@AOL.com, and I will do that with not a problem. But like I said, once you've exhausted all the different options, that's when it might be a good time to consider using a site enhancement oil. And as far as I'm concerned, and the science of site enhancement oils, the only two that have real science in them are Chris Clark's product, synthesized, and Painless Pumps. And that's why I sell both of those at DavePalumbo.com. And I don't, these other brands are just basically oil in a bottle. And to me, it's a waste of your time.
A lot of questions on Instagram. Let's get to them. This one caught my eye from Mike Pachalski. Dave, if Dexter Jackson went down to 212, could he beat Flex Lewis?
No, because he wouldn't look like Dexter Jackson at 212. He would look like a small Dexter Jackson. You got to compete at what looks best for you. Dexter is dominant at the weight he was. Now, that's not to say when he was coming up and he turned pro, I think he turned pro at 189 pounds. I was actually in the show, the North American Championships. That's not to say that look might not have beat Flex Lewis, but his body has grown beyond that weight, okay? And now he weighs probably 225, 230 on stage, and if he had to go backwards, his waist would be too thick because he's changed the structure of his body. But coming up, it would have been an interesting battle for certain.
Ali_Sanuna, does water intake depend on someone's weight? I'm 170 pounds. Do I need to consume 1.5 gallons a day?
I truly believe in, and this is probably, a controversial statement, but I truly believe the body knows what it needs fluid-wise. I don't think you need to overdrink. I don't think you need to force drink, okay, like a lot of people do. Oh, I got to get this gallon down. I don't believe it. I believe the body knows when it's thirsty, and it will tell you when it's thirsty. There's hormones that will be released to tell you it's thirsty, aldosterone being one of them. I think people drink too much fluids, and I think they water their electrolytes down. I think that's why a lot of people have night cramp problems. They cramp at night because they don't have enough salt in their body. So they undereat sodium, they overdrink water, they water down the electrolytes, and then the muscles can't contract well. They get cramps, they don't feel right, they get dizzy, lightheaded. Don't overdrink. Drink enough, but don't overdrink.
Surprisingly, we've never gotten this question before, and it's kind of relevant given that we are heading into the colder climates. Column_David_ZS, should you train when you're sick, in parentheses, cold, flu, etc.?
Here's my rule that I developed, and I learned the hard way, okay? If you don't have a fever, you can go to the gym, unless you're like a mess, and you're just sniveling all over and you're getting other people sick, then I think it's irresponsible. But if you don't have a fever, go to the gym and train. If you have a fever, stay home. I remember I was getting the flu one day, true, and I was obsessed with working out at this point. And I'm like, I got to get this leg workout in because I had a feeling that I was going to get really sick and I wasn't going to be able to train for the next couple of days. So I went to the gym. I felt like I was achy. I was getting the chills, and I pushed through a squat workout. I did legs, and I was so happy. I'm like, all right, I feel terrible now. I'm going to go home and I'm going to drink a shake, and I'm going to go to sleep, which is what I feel like doing right now. I'm exhausted, to be honest with you. But and when I got home, I felt I was shivering. I was under the covers. I got so sick after that. I probably made it worse. I probably got no benefit out of that workout whatsoever, and I probably set myself back a few days. So if you don't feel good and you're having a fever and you get that achy, you think you got the flu type of feeling, don't worry about the gym. Believe me, you can take 2 weeks off from the gym if you train religiously, and it's not going to negatively affect you.
Let's go to Armenian Adonis. Notice any stomach discomfort during peak week from too many greens?
Peak week, when people are getting ready for a show, a lot of times they get gassy, they get constipated, because basically they have no body fat in their body. They're doing, sometimes upwards of 2 hours of cardio a day. They're on 1 million fat burners. Their body's stressed out. They're not sleeping well. The food is not processing well. Their body's using every morsel of food you're eating. And because there's no waste really in your colon, because everything's being used, everything kind of sits there a lot longer. That's why it's very important that you take a fiber supplement like Fiberlice twice a day. I can't implore you enough that absolutely need to do this, because if you don't get that waste out of your body, it sits in your colon and it turns to cement. And when it turns to cement, it's not coming out. And you could try enemas and colonics and all the things you want. It's going to be a miserable experience for you. If you take a fiber supplement, a psyllium-based fiber supplement twice a day, and once again, I believe that Fiberlyze is superior to just a regular psyllium supplement because it also contains insoluble fiber in addition to the soluble psyllium. You won't have that problem. You'll be able to go to the bathroom continuously. But in the instance that you do take fiber, you are doing everything right, and you're still constipated, as long as it's not the day before the show, you could take a product called Super Dieter's Tea. It works pretty good. You put a tea, it's like you make it like tea. You put 1 tea bag or 2 tea bags. You do it once. That's it. You drink that tea. Within 8 hours, you will go to the bathroom. Trust me. Just be patient. Don't go and do another set of tea bags because you'll kill yourself. I'm telling you, you'll over dehydrate.
You're watching Ask Dave on RxMuscle.com. 30-minute question and answer show with Dave Palumbo. We'll stick with our Instagram questions and go to Mr. Richard Morrell. Dave, what is your opinion on the celebrity craze of GH for anti-aging and the various health benefits?
I had a great friend, Dr. Michael Kaufman. He was a true mentor to me, actually. He was a dermatologist. He went to the same medical school I went to 20 years earlier. He was a valedictorian. He had maybe one of the most impressive set of arms I've ever seen on a guy almost 50 years. He was, you know what, when I met him, he was probably my age right now, 48 years old. That's how long ago it was. And he was the guy who taught me. I never took an anabolic steroid. He basically taught me the right way to do things because he was a medical doctor. He was a genius, this guy. And, you know, I forgot the question. What was the question?
No, just the celebrity craze.
Oh, the celebrity craze. Okay.
GH, yeah.
He said to me, because this is when this was 1990, they had just made anabolic steroids a controlled substance. He says as soon as the congressmen and the celebrities start using this stuff and realize that, hey, I can get a better erection, I can have better sex on this stuff, it'll all become legalized or at least acceptable. And he was 100% right. All the horny congressmen now want to take testosterone replacement. They all want to live forever, so they're all on GH. The celebrities want to look young forever. They're on growth hormone. They take testosterone and bioidentical hormones for replacement so they can feel better and look rejuvenated. And now it's acceptable. Yet your athletes still can't take it, which, you know, that's against sport. But you can go to a million rejuvenation clinics all over this country, and you can get testosterone prescribed for you, GH. Matter of fact, I work very intimately with a new clinic called Titan Medical Center. You can go to see their website at titanmedicalcenter.com, and you can call them up, and you can even say I referred you. But they're terrific because you don't even have to go to the clinic. You could do Skype sessions with the doctor. They'll prescribe testosterone. They'll prescribe GH for you. They'll prescribe, you know, vitamin mix. They got injectable antioxidants. I'm going to do a little video on it. I'm doing glutathione injections. They have injectable amino acids that will cause nitric oxide release, arginine, citrulline, to get better pumps before you go to the gym. They're so progressive. If this had been around 20 years ago, they would have been locked up. And this is all because of the celebrity and the congressman wanting to live long and feel good. And you know what? I'm glad society has finally caught up to what the bodybuilders knew 20 years earlier. And I, you know, in retrospect and in memoriam for my good friend, Dr. Mike, who's no longer with us, you were right.
Let's go to Boy from Paris 1337. Can you please ask Dave whether we should count non-animal proteins from foods like rice towards our total protein goals of the day, or should we only count animal sources? Also, would a 0.75 gram per pound work as far as fats go on a keto for a natural male?
Yeah, I wouldn't count the indirect sources of I wouldn't count like the rice and the beans and stuff like that, or you know, for protein. I only count the direct sources of protein. Just like, you know, otherwise it becomes, there's too much minutia there. There's not enough protein in rice that you really have to worry about it. As far as the fat content goes, for a man, I do like about 3/4 of a gram of fat per pound per day to start off with. So that would be perfect for you, yes.
Speaking of fat, Taylor Ramey 28, Dave, what are your other favorite fat sources other than mac oil?
I like avocados. I like whole eggs. I like almonds, cashews, walnuts. I like a little bit of extra virgin olive oil, if you can get real extra virgin olive oil these days. What else do I like fat-wise? I'm okay with coconut oil. I don't think it's not an essential fat, so to me, it's kind of a waste, but it's still a good fat source.
Let's go to Brooks Clark. Dave, are hair removal products bad for you, such as Nair?
You know, I never. Maybe it's my Italian hair, but my Italian hair does not. Nair, it like laughs at Nair. You could put Nair on my body and leave it on for 2 hours, and it wouldn't take the hair off my body. I don't know if this stuff is good. Anything that makes something fall out on your body, just to me, sounds dangerous. I would rather just shave. But I do know some guys that use Nair. But it's weird because if you don't have the right kind of hair, like for nice fine hairs like that women have on their legs, stuff like that, Nair works fine. But if you have coarse hair and you're on anabolic steroids, which makes your hair even thicker and denser, there's no way Nair's working on you.
John_Nielsen, for 6 meals a day, is it best health-wise to evenly distribute your carbs, fats, proteins in every meal?
I prefer that. I prefer to spread them out. The only meal I don't eat fats at would be your post-workout meal because that's carbs and protein. You want that absorbed quickly. And usually I don't eat carbs before bed, unless I'm training late at night. So other than that, yeah, I would divide everything equally.
Nimai 1, Dave, is the elliptical okay for cardio?
Yeah, I think it's good. I don't think it's a high-intensity cardio machine by any nature, as long as you're not running on the thing. And I think it's good for the joints, and I think it's something different other than walking on a treadmill or pedaling a bike.
Hulk Strong 92, what was the most testosterone mgs you ever heard a pro take?
I've heard some. I know a guy who was taking 10,000 milligrams a week. That's absolutely ludicrously insane, and he was sweating profusely. He looked like he was going to die. I told him, "You're going to die." I said, "What are you doing?" And he's like, "Oh, I'm doing 10 grams of test a week." I said, "Where?" That's a lot of injection. That's like a Valentino. Probably Greg Valentino might have taken the most, and we don't even know how many He was doing a bottle a day. So he was doing, what was it? I guess it's 1,000 milligrams. He was probably doing 2,000 milligrams a day, which would, at the end of the week would be, about 14 grams. So Valentino was probably doing the most of anyone I ever knew.
Let's go to Rocco the trainer. Dave, how is it that two people can look totally different at the same body fat percentage?
Well, it depends on how spread out it is. If you're 6'5" and you weigh 300 pounds and you have 10% body fat, it's going to look a lot lower than if you're 5'2", okay, and 190 pounds and have 10% body fat. It's the distribution of it that makes it different, and it shouldn't be, but it is.
Chiron 35, Dave, I've been having tendonitis in my shoulders and elbows for about 3 months. I'm desperate. I want to go back to the gym. What would you recommend? Anything that would help me? I'm taking 5 to 10 arthrolyzed capsules a day, but still have a lot of pain.
I mentioned this on a previous show. ART, active release techniques, is a great technique that will help reduce pain, especially caused by tendonitis and joint and muscular injuries like that, due to the fact that it removes adhesions or scar tissue from the muscle and allows the muscles to move correctly, sliding past each other. That's a good technique. If you use anabolics, Decadurabolin is a great reliever of sore joints. I mean, it's probably better than taking a cortisone shot, especially because it doesn't have the negative side effects of cortisone, which would be suppress the immune system, obviously cause bloating and fluid retention, and causing fat deposition. So DECA is great, and I would also say, once again, the ART therapy.
Protein 1, Dave, what do you recommend for a carpal tunnel?
Well, it depends on what, causes the carpal tunnel. Usually surgery on a carpal tunnel, where they actually open up the tunnel on your hand and make it bigger, has only got a 10% success rate. The success rate with ART, which I just mentioned previously, active release techniques with carpal tunnel, is like 90% success rate. So once again, they believe it's the adhesions of the muscles sticking together and trapping the nerve in that space that's causing the carpal tunnel pain. If they can free up those nerves by getting rid of the adhesions and the scar tissue between the muscle fibers, the pain goes away.
Jacked and Stacked 1, Dave, in your opinion, what drug would be more optimal for muscle growth, DECA or EQ, and at what dose?
They're both pretty comparable to each other. DECA 3 times a week, 200 milligrams, 600 milligrams of that, or 600 milligrams per week of equipoise. They're both really good. To me, equipoise makes you a little hungrier, but DECA actually takes away joint pain, which I really like. And to me, I never had a problem sexually with DECA. Some guys have issues with getting erections on DECA because it raises prolactin levels. Never happened to me. So to me, DECA was one of my favorite drugs.
We're going to take 2 more questions. One from Lolo Laura 03. I hate this show because my husband won't stop calling me Laura Palumbo since I constantly quote all of Dave's fitness nonsense. I've been doing the 12-hour fast once a week for detox. I know that Dana Lynn Bailey talks about how she only has an 8-hour feeding window between 12 and 8 p.m. She does fasted cardio every morning and sometimes even trains fasted. I'm curious to know how you feel about this and why. Also, want to make it to the next Guru seminar in the next year and wondering where they will be located since you're moving to Florida.
Well, they'll probably be in Cape Coral, Florida, more than likely. The ones in Florida at least. If I hold ones in other parts of the country, we could talk about that. As far as fasting, I try, and I don't always get it. I try to eat 12 hours out of the day. So I give my body, because it takes 8 hours to digest the last meal you had. And then the next 4 hours after that 8 hours is a detoxification period in your body. I think that's adequate if you do that daily or almost daily basis to really stay toxin-free. I don't think it's necessary to go to the extreme that Dana went to necessarily, where she's only eating 8 hours out of the day. I think if you eat 12 hours out of the day, you can get all your meals in, you can still maintain your muscle mass, you can do a good contest diet if you wanted to, and still remain healthy. Now, if I was still competing with my metabolism, I would never go 12 hours without eating because I would disappear. So for a competitive bodybuilder, I would not follow this regimen. For someone who's maybe cleaning out after a show is over and they're off a cycle now, that might be something that you can do, but I wouldn't do it during an active contest season.
One more question, and you get this a variety of these questions all the time, but JP Costanza wants you to break down and explain what MENT is.
MENT, simplistically saying it, is methyl nortestosterone. Okay, and what's nortestosterone? Or nortestosterone. Nortestosterone is an anomalous version of testosterone, created, and Patrick Arnold could probably explain this better than I can. It has an added group onto it, and this added group, inhibits it from doing certain things. One of them being converting to DHT, or dihydrotestosterone. So a lot of guys like it because it doesn't cause prostate issues, doesn't cause hair loss, these 19-nortestosterone products. A lot of like DECA, Trenbolone, these are 19-nortestosterone-derived drugs, okay? MENT seems to be methyl nortestosterone. Now, it was never released as an anabolic steroid, so people are selling it as one of these off-label, gray market, never-before-defined drugs. I still think it's illegal to me. To me, that's still an anabolic steroid, even if it hasn't been specifically called one in the books, okay? It is an anabolic steroid. It has muscle-building properties. It has no conversion to DHT, but it has a very, very high conversion to estrogen in the body. And because it converts to estrogen at a very high amount, you can get a lot of estrogenic side effects, and it suppresses the body's natural testosterone production very quickly. To me, that's not necessarily a great drug to use. There's so many better drugs. Let's face it. When the I guess you could say the FDA, Food and Drug Administration, or the whatever organization discusses what drugs will be approved for release, I guess it's the FDA, they sit down and they figure what are the most potent drugs that work with the least side effects, and that's what they release. So the anabolic steroids that are on the market today, are the ones that work the best. They didn't forget MENT. The reason they didn't produce MENT was because it had too much suppression of pituitary function and too much conversion to estrogen. If it didn't have that, they probably would have released it as an anabolic steroid. So people are trying to find loopholes or drugs. Once again, it's like the old, what's the secret? This must be the secret drug to Dorian Yates, why he was so big, or Ronnie Coleman. No, it wasn't. It was just hard work.
On that note, that is going to do it for this episode of Ask Dave, brought to you by Species Nutrition. For Dave Palumbo and Johnny Styles, I'm Sadiq Faruqi. We'll see you next week.